Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon or good morning if you're listening to this in a far distant time zone or at a different time. We're really glad you're here for our second Tuesday Zoom series, which is a monthly occurrence with the Auxiliary Markings Club. We have them right through the year. And you can find the full schedule through the end of 2026 on our website. So if you've enjoyed this, we hope you'll come back. And I'm Greg Redner. I'm the president of the Auxiliary Markings Club. And a few commercials to begin with. So, if you're not a member of the Auxiliary Markings Club, you have to ask yourself, why not? It is the most affordable and I believe exciting philatelic club on the web. It can be found by going to our website at postal-markings.org. We have a wonderful newsletter that comes out 4 times a year, an e-newsletter which comes out monthly, this series of talks, and we've even had a wonderful joint publication from with the Philatelic Specialist Society. It's a really exciting group of people, and I've just read today that if you get your membership in before the end of this month, you'll save $3 on your membership. So it's a real bargain at that point. Please check us out on social media. We're on both YouTube as the Auxiliary Markings Club. So if you miss a meeting, you can catch us there. And we also have a Facebook page, which can be found by searching Auxiliary Markings Club. And almost every day of the year, there's a new piece of postal history with some interesting markings on it. As one of my young choristers says, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, please. Our presenter tonight is Jere Dutt. Jere's been collecting for 50 years. As a child, the palm climber design of Dahomey caught his imagination as the most exotic stamp and place in the world. And if you're a member of the Collectors Club of New York and you haven't seen Jere's superb presentation on this issue, I encourage you to go watch it. It is really an interesting, fine presentation. So this discovery of the palm climber design led to a love of French colonies as well. And Jere is the incoming president of the US France and Colonies Society. Other philatelic responsibilities include a board position with the American Association of Philatelic Exhibitors, a member of the APRL APS Finance Committee, and also a judge, as well as a frequent exhibitor. Outside of his philately, Jere owns and operates several businesses and is blessed with a wonderful wife and family. He can be reached via email at jerry@duttonenterprises.com. So Jere, we're going to turn it over to you, and thank you very much for being here.
Easy enough. I will get to the share. It says one participant can share at a time. So I don't know if it's let me share. Is it let me share there? Oh, yeah, there we go. Share, boom, share. All right, and we will. Is it gonna let me? Why won't it let me play? There we go, play. And now we're pretty fancied up. So is everybody seeing that? Occupied Togo and beyond? Thumbs up. Excellent, good deal. I will just as of yesterday, since we just did some commercials, I will put a quick plug in. I have been blessed with the opportunity to take part in Boston 2026, involved with the volunteers. And this is a giant plug. If you're planning on coming to Boston at all, hit me up, go to the site and register to be a volunteer. It takes all of us to make programs like that come together, as it is with something like this. Each and every one of us kind of sharing our information and our skills and obviously our pleasure for the hobby. So hip over to Boston and volunteer if you're going to be there. It's going to be an awesome show. So with that, we'll kind of jump into how we ended up with Occupied Togo and beyond for this evening, as it said in the introduction. And thank you for that, Greg. Appreciate the kind words and toss over that I am a Dahomey guy. And if you know me at all, everything I do is eventually somehow going to come back to Dahomey. And so in my beginning research, and kind of working through that. As some of you know, there's a little bit of background here. So, in colonial Africa, and most of you know this, so this is some quick review, but I like to make sure we're all up to speed. The Berlin Conference of 1884 kind of divided up the continent. Everybody in Europe was kind of picking where they wanted to go and what was going to happen. So the interesting portion there, kind of on the southern portion of the western hump of Africa. You had the Brits and the Germans and the
I already
French.
had pizza, leftover pizza.
Kind of had the Brits, the Germans, and the French kind of all connected to each other there with the Gold Coast, Togo, and then Dahomey on the other side. Everything was normal colonial development in all three of these countries until it was disrupted, and as everything was by World War One. So we're kind of going along normal colonization, if you will, and World War One erupts. And so what did that bring to the continent, and what did that bring to these countries? We're going to take a brief look at the German and British presence early, and then a little bit more focus on the French presence with a focus on the philatelic research. What really brought this together, you'll see. There was a book out by gentleman Martin Wallace, two guys that worked together, that talked about the earliest known uses, late known uses, when the stamps from Britain and France were coming into Togo after the takeover, and then some of the what gets us together is some of those markings and the uses of the labels, etc. So it was pretty interesting, and that's kind of how we're going to get where we're going. So Togo itself was originally a German colony, typical German colony. They issued these 1900 Kaiser Yacht series for Togo. There were 13 stamps ranging from that 3 pfennig up to the 5 marks. And these were it. These were their standard colonial series, and the only series that Germany ever released in that colony. Personally, I love this series. I love that yacht series. I think they're just beautiful stamps. And we'll see some overprinting on that in a little while. So hostilities lasted. I want to close this so I can see a little bit on the top there. My screen's kind of blocking some of my stuff. Oh, I'm not gonna be able to do it. Anyways, the hostilities only lasted a very brief time in August. What had happened was, once that war erupted, the Allies said, "Hey, we're just going to pincer move this." The British came in from the West Coast, and the French came in from the East Coast and squeezed everything in, and they took it over pretty quickly. By the end of August, kind of everything was done, and it was now in the hands of the British on the left-hand side and the French on the right-hand side. So the supplies of yacht stamps they found, you can see the numbers there kind of were divided equally by the Brits and the French. There was a little bit of a smaller find later they discovered. And again, those were divvied up as well. So when they went to overprint these, the Brits produced 3 different kinds, and they were varieties, as you can imagine, different typesets, different fonts, a lot of different things. That's obviously not the focus of this talk or the previous talk that I gave on these issues. But depending on when they were printed and where they were printed, there was a lot of different stuff that happened. If you're super interested in that overprinting, there's a great book by Charles Greenwood. Part of the purpose that I wanted to use this particular cover or this particular postcard was that was it. I mean, Togo, Dahomey, Gold Coast, they were not particularly developed. These were not overly developed. There was not a lot of industry. There was not a lot of roads. There was not a lot of infrastructure. Those kind of pictures and those kind of postcards were not the exception. They were the norm. So they weren't fighting over resources. They were just kind of fighting over that territory, and especially during the war, they were just trying to cut each other off. The reason Togo was exciting at the time was there was a radio base that the Germans had built that could actually reach back to Europe, and the Allies were able to knock that out and kind of slow down the advance of the Germans in Africa. So, what am I? Oh, why am I not? Uh-oh. Yeah, there we go. So what this is all based on, and I will not stay on this slide very long because it's super boring, but what this is really based on is I kind of started seeing this table from this book that was talking about the overall hand stamp uses in the particular towns, which ones they were using, when they got there, earliest, latest, and obviously I was focusing at the time on the Dahomey stamps being used in Togo, my little palm climber guy, which is what they came over and used as well. So I kind of got interested in that. And then it kind of slid down into the postmarks, which obviously this group's interested in. It slid down into when those CDSs were being used and when they finally got French ones in or British ones in, how long they were using the German ones, when they were using the German ones. And then it slid down into postal supplies and really focused on the registration labels as well. So that's what kind of pulled me into it. I just started to kind of update this information, and it kind of got me interested in these registration labels. So briefly, the French also had multiple printings of the occupied stamps, and they obviously it's a little different than the British ones, but a similar concept: occupation Franco-Anglaise versus the Anglo-Franc. And they had multiple printings as well. There was 11 different surcharges. Again, as you would expect, and this is what kind of I think interests us all about moments like this when there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of movement between the postal services, the postal the stamps and the supplies, the routes, rates, all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting to me that as these started to play in the theater down there. This particular stamp obviously was a French, so it's a French stamp going back to Porto Novo, which is over in Dahomey, but those are German CDSs. So that's a steel German mark that was still used. So they've got the overprint stamps. They kind of took the German stamps, they started overprinting them, but then they're still using then the German resources that were left behind. This one's kind of interesting as well. I think this is kind of a great crossover example. As you looked at this one, it's a little later in 1916, but it's a German postcard that they then overprinted on the postcard itself with that Franco-Anglais overprint, talking about their control of the area. Then you see some of the two greatest stamps in the world, the Dahomey palm climber there, that they're now have shown up to be used in the colony. So you got a German postcard, you got a couple of French stamps, you got a French registration label now, as you see, and we'll get into a little bit later why and what earmarks that as a French registration label, but it's a French registration label, still using the German slug, still using the German canceller, and then obviously it's going through London because it went via Liverpool over to this person's a known dealer collector, the Bolliger, however you pronounce that. So it's just kind of interesting, all that coming together, coming through a German X territory, still using some of their supplies. Now going, instead of, it's a French, it's obviously a French start with the stamps, but then it goes via Liverpool and through the British system to get it there anyway. So a lot of interesting crossover as we go. So what had happened when they did that pincer move, you can kind of see the main occupying forces that came in. It came both north, mid, and south of the country. They kind of had a quick a quick run over, and then they came back and they settled in the northern town. And I'm not gonna slaughter the name, but they came back to the northern town for good in early September, and this card was mailed the same day as they officially took over that town. So that's obviously the earliest known use of a Dahomey stamp in Togo on that day. But again, a German mark, as somebody must have brought that with them, as the French forces brought that stamp with them to go. The division of Togo was done vertically. That way they kind of had access. There was some resources in the north, and then obviously the ports in the south that they wanted to kind of just split north and south, and that way they gained influence throughout all the areas of the country. That was my fancy transition there. This one as well, I believe that's a German postcard sent to an interesting location, the French Antilles. But again, this one was used more for the kind of feel for where we're at right now. There's a mix of some European design and architecture, but a lot of it is a whole lot of nothing. And then if you kind of look to the left and the back, there's a lot of native style buildings as well. So this is what they were fighting over. This is why there wasn't a lot of, okay, we moved in, now we're here, and we got French stamps, we got French supply, we got all of our resources. This was a war period, number one, and number two, this was not on the main track. So these were things that were kind of, backwoods a little bit. And so they used what they had, is what we're getting at. So this one here, that's number one. I don't know about you guys, but that sure looks like a pretty creepy picture to me. It's like, wow, what a strange looking postcard. But this was an interesting postcard that much later now. So this is 1916 in Port Seguro. It's the first recorded use of a Dahomey issue in that town. So whether that so first recorded. So there may have been some earlier, but not a lot is what I'm getting at. So it didn't kind of rush over, and all of a sudden you had all of your French supplies in this area that you were transitioning to. So again, transient nature of the area, German postcard. Oh, and yeah, by the way, it's an English, it's written in English back to England, to, back to an English place in the French territory. So French postal system. Now you've got German supplies using the French postal system written by an Englishman. A lot of crossover in this area and transientness, which kind of backs up the fact of what we're going to kind of talk about here in just a minute. So this one was also interesting on my little guys. So now this is late in 1919. It's the latest use of a Dahomey without an overprint, because then Dahomey overprint, the French overprinted Dahomey stamps with this Togo occupation overprint. And so this is a latest use of the Dahomey without the overprint, and it's a late use of the first overprint. So this is obviously a philatelic, even though it's commercial use, is going from one commercial office to another, back in Lomé, Togo there. So it's a commercial use. I believe that it's a commercial use, but somebody, I think, was making it look pretty, kind of like what we do now. Even on our business mail, I put pretty stamps on it. So I think that's what that really came together, because there's already a second Togo overprint by this time, but it still looks cool, and I think it's interesting. And if you're tracking some of that early, late use kind of thing, it's kind of nice to have one like that stuck in there. So last but not least, on kind of this portion of it, again, some of the buildings that were there. This is the latest use of this particular mark, which is a German mark, and the blue is pretty rare. So now, again, fairly late. They've got the German marks are still there. I believe that blue was a German, so I think that was a color. I think that was still left there. I haven't done enough research to say, yeah, for sure, Germans did a bunch of blue, but in the French world, that's kind of an offbeat color of what they were doing. So an interesting latest usage out of particular towns, and that chart really got into the weeds like that. It was each town that had a postal system, each town that had a post office, and when things were coming and going. And it's an interesting setup when you really dive kind of that deep into it. It's the first time I've really kind of gotten interested in how that was moving. Um, so this one, again, I have a lot of late year 12 to 15 updates to what the earliest and late uses were in my collection. I thought this was really interesting. Again, still the German mark there on 16. But what I loved about this cover is that you do not see that full name there, the French Anglo occupation Togoland. It's just very rare to see that. And the other part of this was I think it's Ed Grabowski, for those of you that may know that name. Ed loves From Nowhere to Nowhere. And this cover pretty much goes from nowhere to nowhere. They're two very small towns. So I did a quick lookup on the name, and I thought that was interesting. I thought that would have been somebody that was somebody British and might have been able to pull it up like what was happening. And it turns out William Dadsey or Dodsey, however that would be pronounced, is an incredibly common name over there. So currently, like right now, when I pulled it up, there a whole bunch of Facebooks came up on William Dodsey, and they were locals, they weren't European guys. So that name, that Dodsey, is either a regular national name, or it's and they've added William to kind of the two different names, or it was adopted by the natives there. So I thought that was just a fun cover, still using that German slug, but having the full name. What happened? There we go. German versus French labels. Now we get to the fun part with stuff that you guys are interested in more. So I'm diving down this rabbit hole of first uses, when things are coming, when things are going, how that movement is happening, when stamps are arriving, when stamps are leaving, when slugs are being used. And a section of this book, which I'll give a full title to it later, starts talking about labels and how labels were used and when they were mixed. And so it was kind of neat. So obviously in the original presentation, and for most of what I'm interested in, was the French labels and in the German territory. But because of tracking this down, I got some British ones. And now when we started talking about doing this particular presentation, I went, all right, well, I got to find a few more. So it gave me a reason to collect something and buy something new. So I went off and tracked down a few new ones. This is the tables that we started with. I won't bore you along with this, but it really had a full description. These guys kind of came up with their own catalog system for the different labels. So descriptions of the labels, what they looked like, where they were coming out of, what's the earliest when you saw this style, what's the earliest when we saw that style. And there's quite a few different labels that they came up with, and I'm now kind of tracking all three of them now. Now I'm in for dime, in for dollar. So these just really show the German and the French stuff that I was working on, but I'm now starting to work on the British stuff as well. This one has not arrived yet. This is in the mail, so that's why it looks like that. I told you I committed when I said I was going to do this. I said, all right, well, I gotta start checking this stuff out. So this one, I was hoping it would have gotten here. My wife checked the mail for me today. It should be, I bet you it comes tomorrow. But the reason that this one was interesting now to me was this is a fairly early date there in February of 15. So it's in that first few, at least the first 6, 7 months that they're there. Now that's an unoverprinted Gold Coast stamp. So the Brits did the same thing that the French did. They had some of their own stamps that they brought with them. Either they had them on them, some soldier mail, that kind of thing, or a few of the guys that might have been organizational, the Vegameister, as they call it in French, or the post guy would bring some of that with him. But they had these Gold Coast unoverprinted stamps. That's a German slug for Lomé, and then that's also a German label. So the couple ways they describe the German label, kind of one of the key ways. I know it looks red in this picture, and that's going to be difficult during this presentation, but the German labels were orange, and then the French were red, and British were blue. So when you see them, it's a little easier than on the presentation in the scans. But so that's actually an orange label, and then it's the font that I don't know what font you'd call it, but the way that number has that fancy, the fancy little balls on it, and that's kind of a script looking font in the number, and kind of the scripty, if you will, Togo and Lome. So that font, and especially the number indication is super easy that, hey, that's a German label. Orange is, those two things are pretty much, yep, that's what it is. So they've come in, they've got their own Gold Coast stamps, and they're stealing the German labels and the German canceller. So now this one's kind of got a little more research behind it. The hand stamp is it's a British label now, obviously, because it's blue. It's in that kind of German Gothic format, printed. This is their catalog number. That RB1A is their catalog number. This is the latest known use of that registration stamp. This is obviously in 1920. So now you're getting a little bit later, using those overprints and the overprints and the labels. However, the Brits, when they came in, as they came in, I think from what I'm seeing, they didn't convert as fast as the French did. You're seeing a lot of late uses, is what I'm gathering as I'm kind of starting to study this. You're seeing a lot of late uses of still German material, like I said, all the way here into 1920. That Lome had 3 different hand stamp styles. There was a script, a block, and then there was also a manuscript where they hand wrote it. The Martin and Walton only broke their identification system down for the British labels into 2 categories, which was kind of strange to me, and I may actually change that now that I'm in here. They have, registration British 1 is a hand stamp, and then subtype Lome, that's the 1A. So 1 was hand stamped, and then A is where it was at. So it's kind of a quirky system, and if I ever keep diving onto this one, which I kind of am, I'll probably adjust that a little bit to make it more readable for us as we go along. If you're interested, obviously you could have been reading some of the postage and things that are over there and how it moved back and forth. The neat thing that I thought about this when I first jumped into it, internal British Empire registration was officially 2.5 pence from British Togo. However, most of the covers you're going to see are only 2. They, that which was the Gold Coast rate. So it's supposed to be 2.5. I don't know, honestly, if I've yet to see one that has 2.5 on it properly, because everything that I've seen or that I can really think about off the top of my head is just the 3. But officially, it's supposed to be 2.5, but they honored the 2 from the Gold Coast, it appears to me, all the time. So now we got a couple more as we're kind of as moving here. There's the block format over here. So this is June 2nd, 1916. This is May 3rd is the earliest known use. So this is a fairly close early use of that. The printed label with all the caps and shading is a little bit. There's a few varieties of those fonts that haven't been tracked yet. So I'm still going to be pulling that together. This was a work in progress that they had put out, and it sounds like I'm kind of carrying it on. So that censor mark in purple is applied in Lome. Everything, all the censor marks kind of popped through there, and they've been seen as late as 1919. And so that censoring was happening in that area. I thought this was kind of neat here on the right hand side, the local overprint had a small F. If you kind of peek the difference between the green stamp and the first red stamp, obviously I did not do that. I don't know about you guys, but I cannot stand writing that kind of stuff on a cover, and I'm going to erase it, but I figured I'd leave it in here for the presentation so we could see it. And then obviously all the information of it, transients and what it was doing, if you like that kind of information. But that's a standard British label at this point. You know, just that blue, couple of different here's another one that actually is blue. It's not gray. And it's kind of a lighter blue. It's a light blue versus the dark blue, but it's still a blue. And then the smaller fonts. So you really start seeing some of these different different fonts, different colors, but it's all a pretty similar thing for the British registration labels as they're coming in. Again, he's got a system down that I think I'm going to change a little bit. This is a mid-range. The earliest known use of this particular label is in May of 1916. The latest is September 16th of 1920. So they're around a lot is what I'm getting at. They're used for a few years. This isn't stuff that kind of came and went in a very tiny window. I think what changes is what marks are being used, what CDS is being used as it kind of settles into what they're going to stay with long term. Now we pop into some crossovers. So if you look here on the left, this is kind of an interesting one. The registration label is a 2-line Skoda. That's a German label. That's orange, and you can tell the way the number is. You'll see that. So that's a German label. However, the block R on the top is the first block R, and that's a French mark. So now they've got their Dahomey stamps in town, if you will, but they're still using the German slug and they're using the German registration label, but they also have their own registration label as that pops in there. Now, my only question that I thought of, when I was doing this is, did they maybe, and I wouldn't know why, but when it got to Cotonou, did they actually pop that registration? The square R in the ink, the French mark, did they do that once it arrived? But I don't know why they would do that. So if somebody maybe has an idea on that one. This here on the right-hand side is the earliest use of that label by 12 days. So it's kind of working our way back as to when they started stealing stuff and using it. So 1915, this is still fairly early, but 6-7 months after they're there, they're still using German material again. Popping in I will not attempt to slaughter that name, but a Takampe or a Takbe, whatever that is, 1915. So again, this is getting towards, they've been there a while, and now they're still using a German registration label. Now it's a single line, and there's also a multi-line of that with Togo underneath it. So it would say the city name and then Togo underneath it. You'll see some of those, but these are the two styles, these are both of that same German style, using Dahomey stamps in the town. Still got German slugs going on it. On the bottom one, on the top, now that's a French slug. So now somewhere along the line by end of 1915, the French have some of their stamps, and now they have their own slug there, but they're still using the registration labels that are German. Moving forward, this is from Ancho, 1921. So this is really late. This is kind of very late. There's no transit stuff. This is the latest known use of these stamps. But now we have a French label. So it's late, but now we're looking at a French label. So this is a French label. This is now red, and the French generally have the N with the little whatever, the little circle thing. So the indicator for number, that's the French indicator. Most of them are this broken. There's a space between the line and the R on the left-hand side. And we have German slug. Now, this is what I thought was interesting. We're back to a German slug. So now this is a German slug on occupation stamps with now at least a French registration label. So I don't know. I gotta keep digging. Are they using those slugs interchangeably? Do they have a French one and a German one, and they're just grabbing whatever they're grabbing? I can't say for sure one way or the other yet. Like I said, I do know this is the latest known use of this particular slug, but we'll find out as we dig a little bit deeper. On a couple different styles now. We still have that on the top here, the registration label with the hand stamp. This is the latest recorded use latest recorded use over here of that particular one. And then we have the on the right hand side, Ancho to Togo 1915. This is definitely business mail because it's going from one place to the other. And now we have no label whatsoever, no hand stamp on that whatsoever. So there's a lot of interchangeability. You see inconsistency with what they're doing and when they're doing it as you're trying to track these labels coming in and out of use. And I think there is some overlap on both of these. I just don't have enough data yet to see if there's overlap on the uses of them. Last but not least on some of this portion here is now we get into we've got the French stamp, but again, still French stamp, as a registration, it's the first recorded block in this town, which is earlier, so a lot earlier than the other one. So they're bringing that block in because this one's going to the Ivory Coast. So I would assume that had to be popped on there because there's no other registration label. So it had to be popped on there in Togo as early as 1916. German slug, French registration slug, and then an unoverprinted Dahomey stamp. So when you really start diving in, there's just a very difficult time, and that's why I think all this data is going to be important. If you like diving in the weeds, as it gets more and more data, and I throw more in here, I think you'll be able to see. And what my wife asked me this question. She goes, "So what? Why do you care when this label was used and when that was used and when stamps were coming and going?" And I said, the reason it's interesting, and we'll pop up here to some more modern stuff in a second. The reason it's interesting to me during that war period, especially, is it really gives you a feel and an understanding of when boots on the ground things were happening. As soldiers hit town, when did mail start working? What supplies did they have? When did they actually get their act together and function as a French postal system or function as a British postal system? When did they get rid of the German stuff? When did they start now becoming fully autonomous and controlling the areas and having supply chains? And I think that's an important study, not for just the history part, because you can really then gather what was happening and kind of really understand the chaos that may have been going on, and also how far away from the real action they were, that it wasn't as important to get things to Togo and to Dahomey as it was to major ports or major supply chains. So I think that's kind of an interesting part. So let's flash forward a little bit since we're talking about labels. Okay, when does things change? And I'm going to kind of carry this on because the data that we had was only for the war period. And so now I'm kind of pulling together. I do Togo stuff now anyway. So I'm kind of pulling together. Let's kind of pay attention to this. So now as you move forward, this gets us into 1930s. And now the French labels are kind of the same. You got the same base concept, but instead of that divider line, it's now perfed, still hand stamped though. So you've got your hand stamps where you're going to be, but now they're perfed with the R, a little bit smaller, different kind of font and funky deal as far as the 30s go. By the way, this was an interesting little town, this Lamacara. It's a teeny little town. It's a capital up in the north east side of Togo. And the only reason it ever grew was because in the 70s, the bad leader guy that kind of took over, kind of the dictator guy that took over, he was from the town. So it's kind of interesting that he helped grow the town because he took over. So now coming to Cleveland, Ohio, shout out Cleveland. That's where I'm from. So we now have 1940 and again, similar kind of label, still hand stamped. A lot of the marks now, since we all like marks, and this is stuff you guys love. We've got an A1 sensor mark, we've got an open device sensor mark, we've got the air labels that are popping on here, we've got a French label, we've got a US hand stamp on the back, we've got the control marks, and we got a bunch of various date stamps and stuff. So a pretty fun auxiliary markings kind of cover that I thought was interesting to see. And I think the last but not least, oh no, I got one more after this. So now we're still moving. Now we're kind of independent Togo. This is 1957, and the style has remained the same. It's that perforated R. That font seems to be the same as I've been trying to compare those. I haven't measured them yet, but that font seems kind of the same, but they're still hand stamping them. So now I'm thinking, I don't know if I've seen pre-printed ones from that 30s through this 50s and 60s. I'm questioning if they're all hand stamped. So they're pre-printed in this like generic label system, and then they just hand stamp wherever they happen to be. Because again, I've got to continue getting data, but I've seen a whole lot of these hand stamps rather than pre-printed until, oh, by the way, missed my joke. If you noticed the one from where this was going to the Acme Supply Company in Cleveland. I was very fortunate to discover an actual picture of the products that were ordered on that previous cover in use. So Acme sent the detonator and the bomb all the way to Togo so that Wiley could catch his prey from Cleveland. Last but not least, a modern example. Now we do have it's kind of changed a little bit. Now they're black printed. The perf is gone, and that looks like kind of a more cheap generic boom registration label. Still hand stamped though. I thought that was kind of interesting. That they don't have the perf. It's in black instead of red now, but still banging with the hand stamp all the way up into 1970 instead of having the town printing on it. Another teeny little small town mailer. That Badu is a tiny little place in Togo. So with that, for full listings of outside updates, et cetera, you can check the Martin and Walton book. If you have real interest, I can send you information or the more details on the book, but it's chapter 9 that they're doing all of this cool registration label stuff. So with that, I will stop talking. If you have any questions, Marty Bratzel had a very nice update on some of these fonts, etc. in the I forget, Cameo, I believe it was, the West African Study Group. So with that, I'm going to escape and stop sharing my screen if I can.
Wonderful, Jerry. Thanks so much. Fascinating stuff.
Oh, there we go. You took it. Okay. Am I done
Yeah,
sharing screen, by the way? Are
you
you?
are. Yeah,
Okay, perfect.
you're all set. So thanks.
All right.
That was really remarkable. I didn't realize the connection with Dahomey.
Oh,
And not that would have been expected, to be totally honest. Two questions I have, or a comment and a question. The blue hand stamp, was that on a Lome cancel?
no, it was a Scode.
Okay, too bad. Because I was going to say, I wondered whether they were doing the same thing the Belgians did, which was to point out that this came from the postal center, the postal jurisdiction of the capital. Because the Belgians, for quite a while, had blue hand stamps that come only from Belgium, or that come only from Brussels.
Huh.
And the other thing is, it strikes me the circumstances are slightly different. This is a colonial empire being taken over by another colonial empire.
And really too, because the
Two,
Brits and
yeah.
the French.
But what's interesting to me is knowing how proud the French and the British were of their postal systems, how they could have put up with those German chancellors for
Oh,
all that time.
yeah, and it really is. It's long and late and
Yeah,
intermixed. And as I'm kind of diving into it, it also looks like, and I agree with you, it almost looks like, did they have them both in the shop? I mean, it's like it
yeah,
seemed, was this, it's so late, and there's other examples of the French or the British stamp here, but now I see it again here later. It's almost like they were both there. So I got to keep tracking that down.
yeah, sure, for sure. Anybody else have any questions or things you'd like to
Jerry,
bring?
any idea how large these post offices were as far as workers or any kind of data like that?
I don't have specific data, but I do know they were extremely small. The capital, I'll just kind of I'll extrapolate to Dahomey. Dahomey, even in the capital in Porto Novo, Cotonou, it was a couple of guys. I mean, at best. There was just not a lot of volume going through there. Because there was not the only people that were literate, and just is what it is. The only people that were literate were the Europeans. The natives were not literate in any way, shape, or form. There was no letter writing communication in that way at all. And just to give context, when the British and the French took over Germany, or took over Togo, there were 314 total Germans in the whole country. 314.
Wow.
So you can imagine, if there were 314 Germans, there was a handful of French, a handful of Dutch, three guys from Portugal, one guy from Italy. There was not much happening. And those 314 citizens of Germany were also including women and children. So it was 314 total Germans. So you can then extrapolate and imagine how much mail was coming out of and into Togo at the time. 300 guys, if they were writing one letter a day. I mean,
Well, they kept those cancelers. They were brand new, barely
you're
used.
right. Yeah. Oh, we got plenty of labels in case we need them.
That's what I'm
It's so
thinking
true.
about those cancelers is if you're in a place with that low of a mail volume, you're not a philatelist. You're not looking at it and saying, this is a German canceller with the name of my town on it. If you've got a canceller with the right name of the town, you're done. Why would you, notice that it should have been different, now that it's English or French occupation? So I
Right.
can imagine them just figuring the problem is solved. Why would I go get a new canceller for every little village in the country?
Yep. And I think that's why it took so long for a lot of those things to happen. Because like you say, it just really was a very low priority situation. And the other half of that as well is it is the mail that moves. It's obvious which ones are philatelic and which ones aren't, because you can tell, like that gal from Switzerland, the one that I actually own separately, bought years apart, cards that the registration labels, the numbers are one apart. So I'm like, oh, I gotta find the one in the middle. If I can find the one in the middle to show, she just said a bunch of stuff that bang, 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 and it was totally philatelic. And the guy at the shop was like, whatever, ding, ding. And because he wasn't, that was not really what his wheelhouse was. So I agree with you totally. It was not a place that a lot of that was being done.
I
Great.
did just check my album. I have a 1935 Scott International, so I end in 35, and I actually have some of the overprints, but none of the German ones.
Oh,
Just stamps, not covers.
yeah. They're fun. Some of those the true stamps are they get a little pricey
Yeah.
if they're true overprints.
Yeah. Anyone else? All right. Well, Jerry, thank you again. Really appreciate your taking the time to come and speak with us. And we always like to let you know what's coming up next. So I will let you know that on February the 10th, Dr. Hironobu Unasake is going to be speaking to us. He's a really fascinating guy. He's a nuclear engineer at the University of Kyoto and also a jazz musician. So he's quite an interesting fellow, and he's going to be talking about the Hakoba post box markings of Osaka and Kyoto. And if this sounds familiar, and you really are interested in learning a little bit in advance, he wrote one of the chapters in our auxiliary markings anthology, which is, of course, available for free download as a freeware publication on the auxiliary markings website, which is postal-markings.org. So I hope you'll join us for this, and I wish you all the best, and thank you again for being here tonight.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you
No
very
problem.
much. Great presentation.
Good night,
I
everyone.
appreciate the time. Thank you.
You bet.